Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime as Liverpool are back in Premier League action at Anfield this weekend. This time it's a Sunday afternoon kickoff, 2 o'clock against Fulham, and we're looking to finally stop the rot that has become record-breaking at home. This is the first time that Liverpool have ever lost 5 games in a row at home. It would be pretty annoying if we managed to make it 6 in a row, and I think none of us really want to think about where Liverpool will be if they lose this game. This is very much just a must-win game. You know, make no bones about it. If Liverpool don't win this one, then I think none of us really know what to do with ourselves or where this season is going, because it would put us presumably at such a distance from the rest of the top 4 that you may as well sack off the top 4 challenge and prioritise the Champions League as a more viable way of getting into the tournament next season. But without wanting to consider losing the game too much, it is of course what you'd hope to be a slightly easier fixture than the one against Chelsea. The one against Chelsea was obviously so galling, not just because we lost, but because Chelsea outplayed us. You know, they came to Anfield and schooled us on how to play football properly. Hopefully we don't see a similar thing this weekend, although with this Liverpool team and the state they're in at the moment, you just never know. So the bottom line is Liverpool have to win this, otherwise it could be pretty much curtains for what has already been an absolutely horrible season. So team news going into the game. We had a few positive updates from Jurgen Klopp and a few less positive ones in his press conference yesterday. Starting with the good news, Nat Phillips and Ben Davies are both ready for this game. Nat Phillips having had a layoff that made him miss the game against Chelsea, and then Ben Davies kind of just being MIA for the last month or so. Both of them are ready for the game, and Jurgen Klopp spoke about how there's a decision to be made on how they're used in this game, whether you can use both of them, especially I think in Ben Davies' case, less so Nat Phillips. You wouldn't be surprised to see him start at all because he's had a fair bit of experience now, and it was a very, very small layoff, only a week long, that kept him out the side, whereas Ben Davies has not kicked a ball professionally in a game for Liverpool yet, so there's more doubt over what role he'll play in the game, whereas I think Phillips will probably get thrown straight in, mainly also because Ozan Kabak, here comes the bad news, is not going to be available for this game. Well, almost definitely not going to be available. Jurgen Klopp said in his press conference that he had a little bit of an issue after the game against Chelsea, didn't really explain what it was, could be muscle, could be, I don't know what, anything, any type of knock that makes you feel a little bit of pain after a match. But what Jurgen said yesterday was it was unlikely that Ozan would be able to take part in this game. Now, that doesn't completely rule him out, and of course, that was just 12 hours or so after the game against Chelsea, so it's possible that whatever issue he experienced could completely disappear overnight, and maybe the coaching staff are now looking at it and thinking, well, you know what, actually Ozan should be fine. But the headline at the moment is that he's probably not going to play. It's most likely that he's not going to play, and therefore Liverpool do have a real decision to make there in terms of who lines up at centre-half. So on to who I think will actually line up for Liverpool then. I think it is going to be Alisson Becker in goal. No surprises there whatsoever. And then in front of him, I think we go with Fabinho at centre-half and Nat Phillips. This is, of course, on the proviso that the Ozan Kabak issue definitely keeps him out of the game. Now, in an ideal world, I'd want Fabinho back in midfield, and I know I predicted that for the Chelsea game and it ended up not coming true, partially I think because of the injury to Nat Phillips, and Jurgen said in his press conference on Friday, the pre-match one for this Fulham game, that it would still be very good to see Fabinho in midfield, and by the sounds of it, the club are doing everything they can to engineer a situation where that is possible. But with the injury to Ozan Kabak, listen, if he was available, you could go Kabak and Phillips. They've played together before, and then put Fabinho in front of them for a bit of extra protection. But with Kabak probably unavailable and Davies just so untested, it feels like it would be a bit wild to throw him in. You know, if there was a Van Dijk available, or even just a Matip or a Joe Gomez, or hell, Dejan Lovren, if he was still here, then I wouldn't mind as much starting Ben Davies alongside him, because you've got someone who's got loads of experience, a lot of time in the English game, who can coach him through it. Whereas Phillips, while he has gathered a lot of experience this season and is looking to be more and more suited to the Premier League as the games go by, I still think he's not quite at the level where you would back him to, you know, be able to help Ben Davies through the game while also delivering his best. You know, he's kind of got to still focus on himself, and so putting someone like Fabinho alongside him will help that massively. Like I said, Klopp said he wants Fabinho in midfield. I want him in midfield as well, and I think this is the kind of game, again, where it would be great to have him there. But circumstances have dictated that once again Fabinho will probably have to fill in at centre half. So I think he will be partnering Nat Phillips, although I wouldn't be surprised maybe if Ben Davies gets at least some minutes in this game, and that could possibly facilitate Fabinho advancing forward into the midfield at some point during the match. But from the start, I think it'll be Fabinho and Phillips. Either side of them, I think we stick with Trent and Robbo as usual. In midfield, I think we're going to go with Gini Wijnaldum at the base once again. Curtis Jones will probably keep his place. And then I think we will see Naby Keita back in the side. Partially because I think he will really, really suit this match. You know, it feels tailor-made for Naby Keita. There should be a little bit of space on the pitch. It's going to probably get the best out of his creativity as well. I'll come onto Fulham a bit more in a moment. But I do feel like Liverpool will be looking to get forward a little bit more. And it'll almost be a hybrid of how we set up against Chelsea, which was very much classic 4-3-3, try and win the battles in the middle of the park. Obviously that did not go well at all, and hybridised with the way we played against Sheffield United, where it was much more forward thinking, much more fluid as well, and players from the midfield and the defence, in Andrew Robertson's case, were actually joining in with the rest of the front three. So with that in mind, I think Keita would be a huge asset for Liverpool in this game. And let's be honest, it just hasn't been going well for Thiago recently. I think it upsets the balance a little bit, and that's not to say that Keita would rectify it completely. I personally wouldn't also be surprised if James Milner has a role to play in this game after coming on against Chelsea, making his return from injury. I think, you know, in terms of balance, putting him in there would certainly help out Gini Wijnaldum defensively and free up Curtis Jones going forward a lot more. But with Liverpool desperately needing a win, we kind of need to go for broke here. And we have been so stodgy going forward. The front three has been misfiring so much that a midfielder like Keita, who we know can provide goals and assists, not just, you know, contribute to the overall playing style, could be very, very vital alongside a similar player in Curtis Jones. So I think those two will be in the midfield with Gini Wijnaldum at the base. And then I think in the attack, we'll see changes as well. I think Salah will keep his place. Firmino probably will, and then I think Jota comes in for Sadio Mane. I think Jota almost definitely starts this game, you know, having made his comeback against Chelsea. It's also noteworthy, if you think this sort of stuff is noteworthy, that he plays fantasy football and he transferred himself in, and anyone who's been keeping an eye on Jota's fantasy football team or the updates from it over the last few weeks will have noticed that when players come back from injury or when players get rotated into the side, Jota tends to transfer them in beforehand. He's done it with Nat Phillips, certainly, I can remember in the last few weeks, so I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he's done that preemptively. You know, he's always going to back himself to have some role in the game, but maybe he's also got the indication that he'll start in this game. And listen, regardless of whether you believe that is any kind of indicator or not, it's almost definitely he's going to start, because the front three, as it has been over the last few months, has been pretty dire on a pretty regular basis, and we all know what Jota has been able to bring to this Liverpool team in the past. So I think Salah probably keeps his place. You know, his playing style and his goal output is so important to the team that I know obviously he gets taken off against Chelsea, which was a wild decision, but I think he keeps his place in the starting 11, and I think it is therefore a toss-up between Mane and Firmino. Firmino's form has been in a bit of a nosedive for a while now. Mane's has been a bit more recent, or at least it's become more noticeable recently, that he's just not scoring goals and he looks a bit of a shadow of his former self. The confidence seems to have gone. He plays well in flashes, but never for an entire 90 minutes, never enough for him to really have a huge influence on the game. And Jota, as we know, loves to play left wing, and I think if you were to put Jota in the middle and have Mane on the pitch, or shift Mane into that central striker role, it's a little bit samey. You know, both of them are quite similar in the way they play, and I think you want someone who's a bit cuter, a bit more, you know, looking to make space, bring fellow players into play like Roberto Firmino, that could pull the Fulham defence this way and that to facilitate Diogo Jota, than if you were to go for Jota, Mane, Salah, and it just becomes all-out counter-attack, pace, 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 pace. So I think Firmino keeps his place, Jota comes in, and then, listen, Mane will probably be on the bench under those circumstances and will still be a great asset for Liverpool if we do need to bring him on to influence the game in some way. So that is how I think Liverpool are going to line up. Onto a quick look at Fulham then. They are on a pretty decent run of form recently. The results maybe don't always show it. They can sometimes get narrowly beaten, but the way they are playing is a massive improvement from earlier on in the season. At the start of the season, they were misfiring going forward and they were a complete show at the back. And as the season's gone on, They've solidified defensively. We kind of saw that when we went to Craven Cottage. That 1-1 draw was one of the first results that kind of turned Fulham's season round. And listen, they could still get relegated, but they're certainly putting up more of a fight than you would have anticipated back in October, November. But that game was one of the first signs that they were tightening up defensively, that they were prioritising that a little bit more over just playing sexy football and trying to win games that way. And then as that's gone on, as that's kind of solidified and they've settled into that rhythm where the defence is much more secure, they've now turned their attention a bit more to the attack as well, and it is becoming very fluid, very threatening. And what's most interesting is it's an attack that can cause problems for any team in the Premier League, not just the teams that they're scrapping for at the bottom for relegation, or the teams in mid-table that maybe they're trying to take advantage of having less to play for than them, and therefore, you know, creating an attacking onslaught that rips their defence to shreds. Fulham are just as comfortable doing that as they are going to Old Trafford or Stamford Bridge or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and trying to go toe-to-toe with them and causing them serious problems, which means that I do think they will look to cause Liverpool problems going forward. They will be, you know, a mobile, threatening, attacking unit, and they will take the game to us. Whether that's a good thing or not kind of depends on how they defend, because as I said, this attacking renaissance came after the defensive restabilising, if you will. You know, they are not a Leeds. They're not a team that just look to create 10 chances, concede 10 chances, and just see who scores as many as they possibly can. It's a team that will look to cause you problems on the break, but will not do that at the expense of, you know, creating space in behind the defence. So it's going to be a really tough game for Liverpool. I think they will take the game for us. The way they attack could also be problematic as well, because it's all based around very fluid movement. Every single player in that Fulham front line is comfortable in various positions. They can, you know, go left. They can come inside. They can look to just turn and play off the shoulder of the last defender. They can come deep as well to receive the ball and start attacking moves. And with the way Liverpool were positionally all over the show at times at the back against Chelsea, that to me is very worrying, because if you have a similar situation, you know, I highlighted Trent and Fabinho in my post-match video, the way they would often not seem to communicate at all. They'd swap over, they'd leave spaces where you'd fully expect one of them to go and fill it to compensate for where the other one has gone. And if that continues on Sunday, then Liverpool could be in for a serious, not battering, but they could end up conceding multiple goals. Fulham probably won't just, you know, look to get one goal and rest on their laurels. They want to beat Liverpool properly, and that means they will look to get in behind and around our defence time and time again. And if we do play the way we played against Chelsea, I know Chelsea played brilliantly and they're probably the second best team in England at the moment, and that is unfortunately one of the reasons that they beat us. But Liverpool let them do that, and we can't afford to do the same against Fulham. So listen, normally I'm very optimistic. Normally I do predict a Liverpool win, especially when it's against a team that's in the relegation zone and we're playing at home. But in this balmy season and this absurd run of form that Liverpool are in at the moment, you just cannot take anything for granted. But what I'm hoping for is the fact that this is a team of players that are very, very strong mentally. We've seen it before in the past. It's wavered a bit recently. That's an entirely fair assessment. They do look on the pitch like they're shot completely of confidence at times, that they don't believe they can do the things that came so naturally to them just a year ago. But they still have the capacity to turn it round. Jurgen Klopp as a manager has the ability to galvanise these players once again, get them believing in themselves once again. I think that's the most important thing, and give them the confidence to know that they should not be afraid of Fulham at Anfield. This is a game that they should be going into collecting 3 points and going home as if they've barely even broken a sweat. I don't think that's how it's going to play out, but I do think with the way this Liverpool team has managed to pull itself back up off the canvas and get back on track in recent years under Klopp, I am hoping that this weekend will finally be the time where we can get our act together, and who knows, it might just not be too late to mount that all-important top 4 charge. But until then, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow afternoon after we've hopefully beaten Fulham. Until then, bye for now.